Well, I've been needing to kick off this second channel that I actually started last year, so we might as well just get into this one. What is going on, you beautiful humans? Welcome to the channel, and I think I actually might need to come up with a different intro because this is the one that I use on my main channel, and then of course the background, but I just like it, so that'll come later. So today what I want to do though is share my thoughts on the controversy on Dolly Parton's project, the one that she actually worked on with Squarespace, the Super Bowl advertisement. So in this commercial, we are quickly fading into the scene of what seems to be the marketing version of what it's like to grind it out day after day at a boring office job. And for some of you, this might actually ring true. But then we are met with a fairly swift transition into the concept of once that 5 o'clock bell strikes, that we're whisked away into a real passion of the side hustle from the hours of 5 to 9. Now, before we get too far into this video and to save you some time here, let me be clear on my position that as an entrepreneur myself, I understand the idea and the passion behind the side hustle. But apparently the authors of the Washington Post piece, Maura Judkis and Sonia Rao, hopefully I'm pronouncing your names correctly, and of course Kim Kelly, a freelance journalist for NBC, it seems that this commercial had left a different sort of taste in their mouths, or just sort of left a different mark. And also, before we go any further, let me state my position here that on this channel, I am not one to tear anyone down, not to tear them apart in any way, because there are plenty of YouTube channels that do this, and I'd rather have an open dialogue about any of these topics, which I know I'm talking to you through a camera, but for the 2 or 3 of you that are watching this, please feel free to hit me up in the comments, because I do spend a lot of time in the comment section over on my main channel, so I think I can handle it over here. Now, quoting from the Washington Post article, gonna change your life, do something that gives it meaning, sings Dolly, and in her updated lyrics. But for many people this year, side hustles aren't the topiary, sculpting, cake baking, furniture building passion projects the commercial depicts. Those are the types of businesses that have been struggling during the coronavirus pandemic, and side hustles tend to be uncreative, app-based gig work that's even bleaker than the day job that this commercial depicts. And besides, apparently that job has health insurance. Now, as a healthcare provider and employer myself, we'll unpack that health insurance and benefits package in another video and the whole healthcare thing all together. But let me just say that as someone who has spent a little time in the marketing space, filmmaking, working with some of these brands, that this just comes down to the advertising tactics that work. It's just simple. Yes, many of these businesses have been impacted by the pandemic, haven't fully recovered, and I get it. Many did have to close, so I understand that. But I think the bigger message that we need to dissect here is really the power of the pivot, and I use that quite a bit. Now, let's use a couple of examples in my neck of the woods where many of the restaurants, and thankfully, were able to quickly launch a website that, if they didn't already have one, that allowed for customers to place orders online for takeout. And some of these sites actually looked a lot like Squarespace sites, or at least something that they were able to build through Shopify. Now, let's not split hairs here on the economy overall, and I'm not talking about the stock market. I'm talking about the economy. So when asking about whether folks could afford to eat out, I completely get it. I know that there is definitely a socioeconomic divide, especially during a recession. But the point here is that some of the restaurants were able to pivot, open their kitchens up, and keep staff employed, handling those orders that were coming in from these sites, and continuing to serve customers, and not likely, probably not at the same volume, I get that. But for some, it was enough to keep the service going, keep the restaurants open. In addition, I do know that some of these restaurants and the chefs, that they use these kitchens to prepare daily or weekly meals for pickup or delivery, because many of us that were working from home, helping our kids in school, and just juggling this whole new, different way of doing things, I mean, it was great to not actually have to worry about dinner. And again, I really feel like I need to reiterate that I understand that this isn't everyone's position in life. My company personally actually works with individuals that typically don't have these resources. And, on that note, We are a service-based business providing medical supports through state and federally funded programs to those that can't really afford care or need advocacy. And so we've continued these services and still do. It still exists during the pandemic. So again, that's for probably another video. But those in the creator space, just going back to another example, that had conferences, weddings, and many other in-person events that were filming, and typically like had these contracts and all of these jobs lined up, they had to figure out a pivot. Many of them actually turned to YouTube, providing tutorials for those that may have been interested in the field of photography and filmmaking, whether it be as a hobby or maybe even looking to start professionally one day. But some of them actually figured out how to even do product reviews and photos, like right in their homes, like realizing that even in a small space, you can definitely, that could be a great host for an amazing commercial. That's kind of that creative process. Now, of course, I even had friends that had kids attending dance studio, like they were going to dance classes prior to all of this. And some of them, like these studios, were able to pivot and offer virtual classes just to keep the kids and the families engaged and like on a routine as best they could. And same thing for the fitness industry, where the instructors that typically are contracted through gyms ended up having to think about another way to reach their clientele. And some of them being able to grab their smartphones. I mean, I always talk about filming with your smartphone, setting it up on some books or a tripod, or just offering some virtual classes. And of course, some of them I get it, having more success than others. I do get that, but it was definitely that grit and that creativity to be able to give it a try. And of course, referencing the article, speaking of furniture, if a business already had shipping logistics and a website up and running, like they kind of already figured that out, how about all that new demand for desks, office chairs, and accessories? I mean, barring any manufacturing issues that they did run into, which I know that there were, but these businesses continued to pivot as best that they could. And there were definitely folks like the smaller mom and pop like setups, like woodworking spaces, that had been doing this on the side anyway, whether it be as a hobby or just a small business. And they were starting to actually fill orders that the bigger businesses couldn't. Because I mean, I personally was actually looking for additional desks and was able to get in with some local folks that had already built like a supply of desks anyway. So let's actually take a piece of Kim Kelly's position here, where she talks about delivery drivers, grocery shoppers, and other gig workers that have become a lifeline to so many, and yet they remain stripped of their protections and dignity that they deserve, I'm quoting the article. Now, I understand that many have had to rely on becoming Uber or Lyft drivers, which I agree is definitely a high-risk situation, even not in a pandemic. But for those that were delivering groceries or items through a service, or prepared food through a service like Postmates or DoorDash, and the argument as to whether they're independent contractors or employees has been a hot topic, and I understand that position. However, I think that this might be the wrong argument in this particular case, because these services, I understand that they're just bridging the gap to help a person get to their own thing. I understand that. But what we don't know is that if there's that entrepreneurial spirit there, and if it's like kicking in and they're trying to figure out this whole thing, like that DoorDash has built, like as an example, potentially creating their own service as a direct competitor, figuring out a way to source their own app, talking with restaurant owners about offering delivery for their establishment, like in a certain geographic location and at certain times, so that they can keep up with that demand, and also building that rapport, not with just the owner of the business, but also with the customers. That's the spirit of the hustle. And I think it's also about that thought process beyond the 9-to-5 mindset and building something of your own. It's not about glorifying working overtime in your current situation at all costs, health and time and, your family, but rather just a way to provide the necessities, the roof over your head, and the food on your table to also fund your entrepreneurial pursuit. Because I think one of the best ways, and I've talked about this, is, if you're trying and failing and trying to figure things out, the best way to actually do that is that if you have an income stream to actually support that endeavor. I also think that there are a couple of other things at play here as well. And one is that some people feel threatened by those that feel inspired to put in a little extra effort on something that may not feel like actual work to us. As someone who's built several businesses, I can't in one video describe like actually building several businesses and what it's like to build something and that motivates you so much that it's really all that you think about. But of course, I need to put a disclaimer here is that, please take care of yourselves, because being busy doesn't equate to productivity. Small sprints, with like in this long marathon with the rest and reconnection that you need and rejuvenation that you need in between, because again, it is a marathon, so you do want to take care of yourself. But what I really see here is like also an issue is with the grid. Also that threat that the gig economy, where other freelancers, such as, writers, like in these articles, they may feel as if their turf is being encroached upon. And maybe that's just an observation. But let me just say that I feel there is enough to go around. If you're willing to pivot, and that's what I really hold steady on, is because you may feel like opportunities in your sphere, like in your backyard, are drying up. And that the more competition that comes into play, that's going to threaten your position and your stage in life and your freelance career. But it doesn't mean that the opportunities don't exist. The thing about the side hustle, and also really having it become your main hustle, is that you have to keep your head on a swivel. And let me also emphasize here that I am also fortunate enough, but also hungry enough to figure out my own pivot in 2020, where I literally had to forego my salary to save the business. And don't get me started on that whole PPP loan debacle, but the business still exists, still providing services, and much of that really is thanks to being able to pour myself into YouTube. So that'll be for another discussion, but I am very thankful that I had that going on and I was able to just move right into it to really start generating revenue to actually replace that salary. But as much as I think that these articles are, like they're there for us to kind of see both sides, they may have really misinterpreted the ad campaign or Dolly Parton's involvement and why. And of course, Ms. Parton, I fully support you being able to use your platform and being an entrepreneur and really some awesome projects, which for the community, I'll certainly link those up if you're not aware of it. But as an entrepreneur myself, I really respect the hustle. But as much as, these articles may have been looking for the clickbait or some salacious title or just spin or whatever it is to get readers, or maybe these journalists, maybe these individuals, like maybe you do think that way. And here's the thing, I am not going to deny you on your feelings on this. Whether I agree or not, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you giving me the kick that I needed to start posting on this channel, finally. And really, I don't want any hard feelings. I do thank you for helping me think about both sides. And while I do agree that there are plenty of folks out there that are working in thankless, low-paying positions that are not safe, but also require them to work overtime to make a livable wage, I am not for that. I am definitely an advocate for a livable wage. But I'm definitely also a strong advocate for those that want to get off the hamster wheel and really make an effort to build something of their own, something that is different than what the commercial really is trying to portray here. I'm all for the pivot. So I usually ask the community, what are your thoughts? What questions that you have? Like, do you have, I genuinely want to know from the couple or handful of you that might see this video, because I do love hanging out in the comment section. So what I'll do here is I will continue to send you my best in your success, in your health. Please stay safe. And I guess we'll just leave it at, I'll catch you right back here around the channel when I decide to post another video. So until then, I'll catch you on the next one.